Events like this are really important because this is probably one of the most important decisions that the British electorate is going to make in many of our lifetimes, and events like these help to put both sides of the case. At the moment, I think we're having a pretty uninformed debate about the UK's membership of the European Union, and I think from the speakers that we've heard from this morning and hopefully this afternoon, you're going to understand a case for leaving but also a case for staying, and that's really important when it comes down to making this case on the doorstep in particular, so that people really understand what's at stake. And I very much hope that organisations like the South East Conservatives European Network will be able to play a part in driving ideas into that reform agenda.
Well, I wish some journalists were here to actually see that there are some very active Conservatives who are very pro us staying in Europe, and I think that it's really important that we get a message out to Conservatives who are pro-Europe that there are a lot of us, and we're going to be campaigning actively and making the case for us to stay in Europe, in a reformed Europe.
So the result of today, I think, has been that we've been able to understand clearly from a range of different experts from academic, business and political life that there are no necessarily simple answers out there, but if you have to encapsulate it in a phrase, maybe it's the devil you know than the devil you don't know, which will summarize the campaign.
It's very important to get it across because the South East is very Eurosceptic just at the moment, probably because of the migration crisis. So we've got to get our message across in that whole area.
What I took away from today was the amazing robustness of the debate, but also the fact that people are really thinking very deeply about the consequences of whether to stay in or leave the EU. And I think it's important that we have a proper discussion. So when it comes to people going into the ballot box and deciding whether to vote to stay or leave, that they've actually had an informed decision.
David Lidwin pointed out to get documents across on a lorry across the European Union, you had to have 122 different documents sometimes, well 100 and something documents. All that's gone. The single market now works and it's worth enormous sums of money to everybody, consumers, businesses, everybody. If we got rid of that, it's going back to the Dark Ages.
I think Europe hasn't reformed enough over the past, and I think that there was a period of stagnation. Strangely enough, I think the current Commission is much more business friendly, much more active and much more energetic. We want much more of that. We want an ambitious trade agreements with Japan as well as the one they're doing with the US at the moment, and also China. And it is absolutely crucial that Europe keeps on the front foot. And that's our role, to be there to encourage our colleagues in Brussels to make sure that we've got ambition for our countries and also ambition for our continent.
Crucially, I think it matters more now than ever it did before. As the EU expands its role and looks to get more involved in wider policy issues, so do business needs to engage effectively with the EU. Given the fact that we're now in the middle of looking at a referendum, the time to redesign that relationship is now. And so we really need to be thinking about what businesses want, what they need, and how that works for wider society as well. So I'm looking forward to having a good chat about what my company is doing and what other suppliers are doing in terms of getting their voice heard, but also what we think needs to change in Europe and how we can get there.
I've always believed that actually what we share in common is much stronger than what divides us. And particularly with issues, if you're looking into the future, like the rise of China or the unsettled nature of a Russia today, or indeed of how we need to maintain a multilateral system when the world is becoming much more multipolar, it means to me that this is something which is not yesterday's organization, but it's very much one which can adapt itself in time to tomorrow and be really relevant when we need it to be a base for our prosperity and security in the world of tomorrow.
I think Europe has already delivered us a lot, but actually it's about our identity. As a country, we need to have a voice at every top table we can get to, whether it be NATO, the UN, even FIFA, but certainly the EU. It's on our neighbourhood. We shape a lot of the policies that come through Europe and affect us. And if we were out, we would be subcontracting decision-making to other people, when actually it's our responsibility and our opportunity to shape a Europe that's good for Britain.
The referendum is merely a beginning. If we do opt to stay within Europe, we're going to have to definitely adapt the way that we as the UK government operates and also the way businesses operate to be more effective and to get up to the kind of standard that we see operating out of Paris and Berlin and Madrid in representing our country and also our businesses effectively. They are better at it than we are, and we need to get up to that standard. Part of the way we can do that is by having the certainty of a referendum which stipulates that we're staying in, and then go on and engage with it on a level playing field and stop looking at EU and policy points of view as a second fiddle to Westminster and others, which most of the people at this event today will be aware of that, but I think more widely there is an issue there. Also, I think it's really important that we basically decide, are we European or are we British or are we both? And if so, how do we rationalise that relationship? And I'm really keen to explore how we go about doing that, but we can't afford to sit in between.
But for me, I think it's important to say, how will whatever decision I make impact on my life? And I think that's a decision that a lot of people will make. Many people, let's be honest, don't care, don't feel it affects them one way or the other. But it'll be those people who do care one way or the other, whether they travel to Europe or do business with Europe or feel strongly about that, or whether there are people on the other side of the argument who say, well, actually, I've got a small business, I suffer from these regulations, I don't trade with the EU, I trade with the rest of the world, and I still have to comply with these rules. So I really think at the end of the day, people will vote in a way that they feel impacts them.
It's very important we hear what's going on, so we can get back to the constituencies and pass it on. Because even the bulk of Conservative committees are still a little iffy about this subject. Anything which enlightens them so they can pass it on to the membership as a whole is important.
We don't just want to have one seminar, we want to be taking this out into the communities and stakeholders across the southeast of England. There are important debates to have. You know, we heard from Robin Niblett this morning, who said that migration could be one of the next topics that networks like these feed into in terms of ideas of where we go next. That's absolutely one of them. Competitiveness. We've heard a lot about that this morning in the European Union. How about a competitive principle that's applied to every new piece of regulation? Those are the kind of ideas that I hope that the network will be able to advance as we go forward.